I hate my boss. I know a lot of people say that, but I really mean it. I hate him more than anyone I've ever met. He knows it too. He knows I want to kill him. I just haven't worked out how to do it. Now, I don't expect people to give me advice on how to kill my boss without knowing anything about him. For you to understand why he needs to die, I have to start at the beginning. My new career started the same way most shitty jobs start, with an advert on the internet. Office workers required, no experience necessary. I have to admit that I found it a little odd they use the term office workers, since most companies prefer something that sounds more important. The honesty of it actually appealed to me. Here was a company that wasn't interested in administrative assistants or customer relations agents. They just wanted office workers. I sent my resume to the email address provided in the advert and spent the rest of the day watching funny YouTube videos. I hadn't expected a reply back for a few days at least. But when I checked my email later that night, I saw that I had received a response within an hour. Welcome aboard. You start tomorrow. I had to read that several times, certain that I'd somehow missed a chunk of the email. There was no address for me to go to and no interview process. According to that email, I'd landed myself a new job within an hour of applying for it and would start work in the morning. I emailed back to ask for details on where to go and what I'd be doing. I got no response. In the end, I figured somebody was probably just teasing me, and I went to bed without giving it a second thought. I woke at exactly 9 a.m., but I wasn't in my bed. Instead, I found myself sitting on a leather couch in what could have only been the reception of an office block. I was wearing sensible work clothes that I most definitely hadn't gone to bed in. Needless to say, I was more confused and frightened than I'd ever been in my life. An older man strolled over to me, apparently oblivious to my disorientation. He wore a neatly ironed work shirt, a striped tie, and black trousers. His thinning hair and slightly watery eyes placed him somewhere around his late 50s. 9 o'clock on the dot, he said in a nasal voice. Very punctual. However, we do prefer that employees arrive 10 minutes early. I stammered some incoherent nonsense about not knowing where I was or who I was talking to. The man cut me off with an uncomfortably limp-wristed handshake. He introduced himself as the boss and showed me to my workplace. My mind raced through the possibilities of what could have possibly happened to me as I followed the man to my desk. Had I just forgotten my commute to work? I vaguely remembered reading something about amnesiacs losing chunks of their memory. Perhaps the same thing had happened to me? The boss showed me to my desk and left me there as he wandered off to his office. I sat, staring in bewilderment at a computer that had to be from the late 90s and a desk phone from about the same era. There were only two icons on the computer's desktop, one named Internet and another named Spreadsheets. I looked around at my coworkers, hoping that somebody could explain what I was meant to be doing. Nobody so much as glanced at me as they typed away at their keyboards. The woman sitting next to me completely ignored me when I whispered to her for help. That was when I noticed that she wasn't actually typing anything coherent. Everybody in that office just tapped random keys, like a child pretending to use a computer. Not knowing what else to do, I opened the spreadsheets folder. By that point, I wasn't surprised when it revealed a garbled mess of meaningless numbers and vaguely business-sounding words. There were columns labeled projected aims, sales goals, teamwork initiatives, and contract ratios. I shook my head, not really knowing how to process what I was seeing. Nobody in the office seemed to know what they were doing, or why they were doing it. They just made themselves look busy with pointless office drudgery. Since only my boss had actually spoken to me, I decided to pay him a visit. Can you guess what name was on his office door? If you guessed the boss, then give yourself a gold star. I knocked on the door and waited for a response. When none came, I just walked in. My bewilderment had quickly started to turn into irritation. "Hello there, please have a seat," he said, without looking up from his computer. I tried my best to ignore the stereotypical office posters on his wall as I took my seat. They were all pictures of serene landscapes with supposedly motivational rubbish written beneath them. They just added to my growing suspicion that the entire office was some sort of elaborate joke at my expense. "I wanted to talk to you about the work we do here," I said, doing my best to keep my voice calm. "Excellent. Work to live, don't live to work. Am I right, or am I right?" "Right. It's just that I don't exactly know what I'm meant to be doing here." He stopped typing for a moment and gave me a blank stare. Just as the unblinking eye contact started to make me feel deeply uncomfortable, he took a sip of coffee and went back to typing. "What you're supposed to be doing is work. Office work." "Yeah, I get that. I just don't know what kind of office work." "Spreadsheets, flowcharts, pie charts. All the charts, really. We need to maximize our efficiency." I laughed at that. It was obvious to me that I must be on one of those hidden camera TV shows. "Okay, very funny. You can all come out now. I know I'm on camera. I've got to admit, this whole setup's pretty impressive. I can tell a lot of work went into it. What channel will the show be on?" "Well, we have CCTV, but security deals with that," the boss said. There wasn't even a trace of humor in his voice or face. The guy was a damn good actor. I smiled, nodded, and left the office. Whatever TV station set that whole thing up now had more than enough footage of my confusion. They weren't getting anything else from me. So I made my way back to the reception and left the building. Well, I would have left, but the doors were locked. All my good humor evaporated in an instant. I banged against the glass and shouted to be let out. I probably screamed for a good 15 minutes before the girl at the reception desk finally looked up from her computer. "The doors are locked. They open again at 5. The drab monotone of her voice drove me over the edge. I picked up a nearby chair and threw it at the glass door as hard as I could. Screw it, they could bill me for the damage after I'd sued the crap out of them. The thrown chair rebounded off the glass without leaving a dent. I stared for a moment, my mouth moving to form words that just wouldn't come to me. In an instant, my anger had evaporated into genuine fear. "Why aren't you at your desk?" came a familiar voice. I turned to see the boss standing with his hands on his hips. "Please, you have to let me go," I whimpered. "This isn't funny anymore." "Are you saying you want to quit?" "Yes, I want to quit." "Well, alright then." He sounded disappointed. "Come back to my office and we'll look at terminating your employment." I followed him to his office, still frightened, but willing to put up with a little more of the charade if it meant I could get out of that building. The hope that it was all just a prank for TV still hovered around the back of my mind, but I wasn't certain of it anymore. If it was, then surely somebody would have intervened when I tried to break the door. The boss rummaged through his desk drawer for a while before retrieving a pen and a slip of paper. The paper simply read, "Do you want to quit? Yes or no?" I circled yes and handed it back to the boss. "So is that it?" I asked. "That's it." "I can go?" "Of course. Once your resignation is approved, you can leave." "Okay, how long does the approval take?" The boss frowned, as if he was struggling to remember the name of a famous actor. He opened his mouth to start speaking several times, but stopped and reconsidered. He did that long enough for it to become incredibly irritating before he finally spoke. "Well, it's hard to put an exact number on it," he said. I didn't like where this was heading. "Imagine if you took all the grains of sand in the world and put them into one giant barrel. Every 1,000 years, somebody removes a grain of sand. When the barrel's empty, your resignation will be well on its way to being approved." I said nothing. What could I have said to that? I just walked out of his office and sat in the reception. The receptionist had said that the doors open at 5 p.m., so I just had to wait it out. The hours passed by with excruciating slowness. Maybe it was just my perception playing tricks on me, but I could have sworn that 2 hours passed for every hour that went by on the clock. At 10 minutes to 5, I prepared myself to bolt out the door. I needed to be anywhere else but in that damned office building. At last, the clock ticked its way to 5 o'clock, and I promptly fell unconscious. I woke again at exactly 9 a.m. in the reception. "Punctual again, but we do prefer that our employees turn up to work 10 minutes early," the boss said in his awful, irritating voice. "I'm afraid you weren't meeting your targets yesterday either. I'll let it slide since it was your first day. Just be sure to keep on top of your spreadsheets in future." At that point, I knew for certain that what was happening to me was not a prank. Not even the most vicious TV show would keep somebody trapped against their will like that. Furthermore, how could they have me fall asleep at exactly 5 p.m. and wake at exactly 9 a.m.? Some combination of sedatives and stimulants? No TV show that I knew of would risk so obviously breaking the law by doing that to somebody. I went into full panic mode then. I had no idea why anybody would keep me prisoner in a completely nonsensical office building. After a good amount of time spent trying without success to smash my way out of every door and window I could find, I finally thought to call the police. To be honest, I couldn't tell you why it didn't occur to me sooner. Perhaps I was just in denial. My phone and wallet were nowhere to be found. The sensible work trousers I wore clearly didn't actually belong to me. I did remember there being a phone at my desk though, so I ran back to my workplace and hammered in the number of emergency services. 911, came the uninterested female voice on the other end. "What's your emergency?" "Police? Please, I need help." "One moment." I waited. Sweat was beginning to trickle down my forehead as I glanced at the zombie-like office workers around me. They carried on with their work without paying any attention to me. "This is the police," a man's voice said. "Thank Christ. I'm being held captive. For God's sake, please send help." "Sir, I want you to remain calm. Do you know where you are?" I paused. I really had no idea where I was. It was just an office. Then an idea came to me. My desk was by the window. I could look outside for any street signs. I spotted the nearest one and squinted to read it. My heart nearly stopped. The sign just read, "The Street." I looked for something else and saw a shop called The Shop, and the barbers called The Barbers. At that point, I'd started weeping in absolute horror. "Sir, are you there?" the man on the other end of the phone said. "Are there any burglars where you are? I'm a policeman. I work for the police department. I could arrest them and send them to prison." I hung up the phone. Trembling, I made my way back to the boss's office. I wasn't too proud to beg him to let me leave. "I'm sorry," he said, after I tearfully pleaded my case. "Your resignation still needs to be approved. It'll take quite a while. Don't worry though, there's no I in team." I lost it at that. You know how they say an animal is at its most dangerous when cornered? That's how I felt. Pure instinct made me lash out. I threw the boss's computer to the floor and pounced on him. I strangled him, punched him, and beat his head against the floor. My eyes were so full of tears that I couldn't even see what I was doing. I only stopped when his face was nothing more than a mass of red flesh. I slumped to the floor and started to laugh. I laughed until I screamed. My second day at the office, and I'd already killed my boss. My friends had always told me office work can drive you crazy. They probably had no idea how right they were. I huddled into the corner of the room and let the adrenaline leave my system. Exhaustion overcame me, and I fell unconscious. I woke up at exactly 9 a.m. Punctual as always, but we do prefer that employees arrive 10 minutes early. I stared in horror at the boss. There wasn't a mark on him. His black shirt was as neatly ironed as ever. "That was quite an outburst yesterday," he said, in that voice I've grown to hate with a burning, venomous passion. "It's made you drop below your targets. Remember, this is a team game. We need to maximize our productivity." So that's been my life for the last... I don't actually know how long it's been. For a while, I actually played along with everybody. I couldn't tell you how long I spent pressing random keys and entering nonsense into a spreadsheet. There was a faint hope that they might let me leave if I hit my targets. That never happened. I'm not sure anybody has ever hit their targets. I've killed my boss a few hundred times by now. He's been bludgeoned, beaten, strangled, stabbed, gouged, flayed, and mutilated. It never seems to work. I've killed myself, hanged myself with computer cables. I bashed my head against the wall until I heard the crack. It makes no difference. I always wake up at exactly 9 a.m. My contact with the world outside the office is limited. My computer can connect to the internet, but it's nearly always some childish parody of the internet I used to know. Every so often, though, I get a real website and I'm able to send out a message. I'm certain that my boss is to blame for all of this. I've never hated anybody more than I hate him. Someday, I'll kill him and he'll stay dead. I just haven't figured out how to do it yet.